16th, 2024, and this is a regular school board meeting. And roll call, all board members are present. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have the mission statement. Nathan Anderson.
The mission of the Foley Public Schools is to bring together students, parents, staff, and community to provide a quality education with an emphasis on developing the full potential of the individual.
Thank you. And we have an opportunity for citizens to address the school board. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on with our meeting. And we are at the state of approval of our agenda. However, we have an addition to our agenda. We have a report here. It's the pre-sale report for the sale of bonds. And we have Shelby McCoy here tonight that's going to kind of help us with this report. And that will be after a truth and taxation meeting. So I would like to add that then as number 8 for convenience, just to continue on with that discussion, and then we'll continue subsequently on, just move each of those items down a number. So I would need an approval of the agenda with this one addition. We also have 2 additions to the consent agenda, but we'll take care of that with our next approval. So we have an approval of, need an approval of the agenda with the addition of the pre-sale report for bonds. And I would need a motion and a second.
Excuse me, what about this one? Did you mention this?
That's what we're on.
I mean, this is...
So motion to approve the agenda with the stated additions and changes.
Motion by Patrick, seconded by Stephanie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have the approval of our routine business items, which includes the consent agenda, board bills, and the approval of meeting minutes. So to add to the consent agenda, we have 2 new hires. And this is our normal procedure to have new hires on the consent agenda. We have a district reserve float teacher, Jennifer Harris. She'll start that position with the district on January the 2nd, 2025, up to 7.5 hours on student contact days, paid at a rate of $21.82 per hour. And we also have an intermediate school education assistant, Tracy Whaley, starting on the same date, January 2nd at step 2, $19.58 per hour, up to 32.5 hours. So I would need an approval of the consent agenda with those 2 additions.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the additions stated.
I'll second.
Motion by Patrick, seconded by Nathan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Embedded within our meeting tonight is our truth and taxation, which is a public meeting. We have Erin Nospeth here as our presenter. She's our Director of Finance. We also have Shelby McCoy here from Ellers, and Ellers is our Public Finance Advisor. So we'll go through the truth and taxation presentation, conversation. We do have the approval and certification of our final levy tonight, which is an action item. But there is an opportunity for members of the audience to ask questions at this truth and taxation presentation. So Erin, whenever you're ready.
Welcome to the Truth in Taxation public meeting. I'm just going to go over first a few of these slides are just kind of notices for the public. And it's just stating that the Truth in Taxation law requires that cities, counties, and school districts follow certain steps before we do adopt a tax levy for the following year. One of those is you receive a mailed statement in the, you receive the mail notice in your mailbox for each property owner in the county, which describes the different tax levies that are happening this year and what % increase the levies will have. second part of the law pertains to a truth in taxation public meeting for each taxing jurisdiction, and that's what we are doing here tonight. We're going to discuss the property tax levy for taxes payable in 2025, discuss information on the current budget, and the public will be allowed time to speak and ask questions at the end. Just some key notes to remember that the revenue formulas are set by the state legislature for voter approved, except for voter approved referendums, so it has not, we don't make any of those decisions, it all comes from the state legislature. There's local levy and state aid mix, which is called equalization, and those are also set by the state legislature. And an increase in local taxes does not necessarily mean an increase in revenues for the school district. So on this next slide, it just shows a little bit, kind of defines what's coming out of our general fund. What is in the general fund, I apologize. Revenue is based on student enrollment. The local referendum levy is part of the general fund. We have classroom instruction, special education, extracurricular activities, transportation, facilities, operations, capital expenditures, and health and safety code compliance all come out of our general fund. Food service is our school breakfast and lunch program. Community service is a levy that's based on the adult population in the district. The early childhood levy is based on the number of children under 5 years of age. Provides for enrichment programs at any age level that are not part of the K-12 education program. Early childhood family education, school readiness, and adult basic education all come out of the community service fund. And the debt service fund is based on annual debt retirement schedules for the district's outstanding bonded indebtedness. So annual levy is for the payment of principal and interest as bonds, on bonds as due. This is just an overview of our 23-24 revenue budget, as well as our current year budget. You can see we are down slightly in revenue for 24-25. And then the next slide shows where our school revenues are coming from. So the biggest piece of the pie there at 87% is state aid. The next biggest one is 7%, and that's what's coming from the taxpayers, property taxes. 3% comes from federal aid, and another 3% are local fees, such as like activity fees and other things that we ask parents for. This slide is the just an overview of the expenditures from last year, fiscal year 24, as well as this year. Again, expenditures we have are trending downward for this year compared to last year. How are the general fund dollars spent? So this is just a breakdown of how all of our revenue is spent within the district. So district and school administration, that's 4.6%. District support services is at 2.2%. Regular instruction for our Gen Ed students is 40.8%. Extracurricular activities, 4.9%. Vocational instruction, that would be our career tech classes, 0.7%. Special education instruction is 19.1%. Instructional support services, 6.4%. Pupil support services, transportation falls under this one, is 8.9%. And our sites, buildings, and equipment, our maintenance, things like that is 11.7%. And any other funding that we may have is 0.8%. So what do our expenditures pay for? 58% pays for salaries and wages for the district, while 20.7% are employee benefits. 11.4% are purchased services, so anything that we sign a contract for or we reach out to somebody to provide a service to the school, that's 11.4%. 6.1% are supplies. 2.8% is equipment, and 0.9% are just other expenditures. showing all of our fund balance information. The one with the longest line there is 422, that's our unassigned fund balance. But all of these other fund balances that you see listed here are restricted, meaning that they can only be spent for what the legislature tells us we can spend it on. We don't have the right to take something from, say, 472 and spend it on whatever we need to spend it on. It is designed to go to very specific items.
Could you clarify like what those numbers correspond to for people who aren't familiar with them? You don't have to like speak like each one is what, but like just a couple of
So for example, like our operating capital, we can only spend that on certain items. We can't use our capital to go out and buy, a lot of things we can't buy with capital. That's to fix our buildings, basically, or to buy big equipment for our building. Some of the other items there are staff development. Thank you. Staff development. There's medical assistance that we can only use on certain items that are eligible for special education services. A big example that we would use medical assistance funds for are school vans to transport our special education students that need, it's required in their IEPs. Literacy is another one. It's using it as well. Just remember off the top of my head which fund goes there.
That's okay. Just want to have some examples for our friends watching at home as it were.
So the next few slides are going to discuss the actual levy itself. The school district tax levy must either be set by state formula, voter approved or board approved, up to $724 per adjusted pupil unit. The factors impacting the tax changes are inflationary pressure on real estate market, abatements, property improvements not previously taxed, changed in individual assessed market value, or possible change in property classification. For example, your homestead now goes to a rental property. How will your 2025 school taxes be spent? 61% will be spent in the general fund, 2% will be spent in the community education fund, and 37% in the debt service fund. And this is our proposed levy. You can see what we did. We paid an actual, or we received actuals in 23, paid 24 levy. We were about $3,911,730.71. Our proposed levy this year is $4,895,990.29. An increase of 25.16%. And you can see the differences in the general fund was a 41.16% from last year. Community services was 10.08% over last year and 6.08% higher in the debt redemption levy. So this is just a breakdown of where all of those changes happen. Our referendum and local optional revenue was a change, an increase of $110,898.55. Equity and transitional increased by $16,153.96. Our operating capital levy also went up. Building and land lease went up a total of $112,946.99. In that building and land lease, the increase there is a result of Benton Stearns Education District. They service all of our special education students in out of the member district or out of the other districts in the area, and they are going out for, we're trying to find a new property for our special education students so we can all be under one roof rather than two separate buildings. So we are trying to locate a new building for that, and we asked our member districts to levy for this so that we could afford a bigger building for all of us, or for all of the students.
And not, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Erin, but not only bigger, but safer.
Safer, correct, and up to date. And
Yes.
Yes.
Up to code.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yes,
The old building they're in was no longer usable, really acceptable.
correct.
Well, it wasn't insurable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were able to get in.
I'm just going to explain for anyone watching. So Foley and several other school districts are part of what's called the Benton Stearns Educational District. And this is basically a big group of school districts who form another school district for our special ed students, provide services that are not at all within the realm of what we can afford as an individual district. But when we all pull together, we have a couple of students who need this, it would cost us an arm and a leg here, they have a couple more, we start pulling together with all these sources, we're splitting the cost. And so if we were like not part of that district, for instance, and not seeing this number here and having to provide those services on our own, I don't even want to think about what it would do to our budget, it would be just astronomical. And these are our students, and so we are basically part of a cooperative with how many districts?
6.
6 other districts where we're all splitting this cost. And so because of the needs of these students, between their safety and their educational needs, and now that the BSE, the Benton Stearns Educational District, currently have 2 buildings which are not servicing the needs that we have, whether it's in safety because the buildings are so old, they can't get parts for, I think there's a boiler, the elevator, a lot of those things that they just can't do. And so when I went to see what it costs to renovate, it was actually more than a projected cost for a new building. So that's why that's part of this.
And again, we're not looking at building a new building
Right.
because of the expense. We find that it's more feasible to be able to lease a space
Yeah.
and then renovate that space is more cost effective.
Utilize this building, so. And so we've been talking about this at various meetings. How long has it been now? Since June, May? March. Yeah, so time flies when you're having fun. So to kind of give a little historical context, there's been several meetings with their board, with our board, representatives going back and forth between.
Thank you for that clarification.
And I'm on the Benton Stearns board, so I see that all the time.
Our Safe Schools levy went down $432. Career and Tech went up $9,736.93. And the long-term facilities maintenance went up $454,946.05. And this is, what you had mentioned earlier, this is part of our bond that we are going out for our IAQ project. And that is where we're seeing the adjustment is on the long-term facilities maintenance.
May I just give the historical context? We also have been talking about that for quite a while. Was that also last spring we started talking about
Last
that?
October, the IAQ project.
Was it last October? So it's been about a year. And we actually can show a map, I think we're talking about putting it up on the website, that shows basically the carbon levels in the high school. And the green is good, yellow is and red, there's a whole chunk of red in the high school. And then the other problems we're having with it, I think is there's pieces that can't be replaced because it's the original stuff from when the building was. So, right, am I understanding that
There's
correctly?
numeric controls that are obsolete at this point, so they need to be replaced. But also our fire panel is not compliant as well, so that's also a significant part of the project. And then also looking at dehumidification of our building. Dehumidification does not exist in the high school building minus the auditorium, but we've had to fix that. And that's been a pretty hefty price tag, and there's also a few classrooms, but the majority of the building is not dehumidified. But we're also looking at planning for the future. And so our intermediate building is not dehumidified, and so we're putting the infrastructure in at this point to be able to have dehumidification in the future.
And so is it fair for me to say that it's been about 30 years since this whole sector of the school has been touched? So
35.
Since the building was built.
So I guess if we,
35 for the high school, now you're down to about 25 for the middle school.
yeah,
But one pod here has been.
yeah.
One
So,
pod has dehumidification.
I guess if we look at that system as being that old, we got pretty good use out of it, and hopefully we get a lot of use out of, that's part of it, I think, too. This is basic infrastructure piece.
And I think to address the carbon intake in the building also is either at a cautionary or alert level, so you really do need to be aware of that. And I think it's just good learning in some of our interior classrooms. And Mr. Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, it's over 90 degrees in some of those interior
It was, I
classrooms.
mean, definitely during the summer, but even
In the
most
fall.
of September, it was above 80 in many of the classrooms. The
Yes.
interior ones are don't have windows.
We not only had students become ill because of the heat, we've also had staff as well. And unfortunately, we can't open windows because of school safety as well, or prop doors. So, and I think in Ms. Nelson's presentation, she'll talk more about the debt. And so taxpayers are able to see where that falls off and why it was important for us to maximize this as well, because in the state of Minnesota, school boards have the authority to levy for an indoor air quality project. It's one of the only few things that we can levy for without asking the taxpayer.
So I'm just gonna kind of summarize. So we've been talking about this for about 13 months. We've had a bunch of meetings, both in committee, out of committee, public, all that. And it's really something that hasn't been touched for a long time. This is kind of like the moment we have to do something. Is that a fair summation? Thank you.
Let me just add, when they built that building, I said it had put air conditioning in, said no, it costs too much money, the ventilation system will be so good, we won't need air conditioning. So we're sure of that. So then he talked about opening the windows, well, I explained to the superintendent, the windows open out, so if you have a fly problem, you have no screens. So it was flat flawed right from the start. If you anywhere around them, when that first year building opened, we were killing flies as fast as we could kill them. So, it was terrible. You remember, Nathan?
I remember.
You remember? Okay.
Well, thank you.
So then just the other increase are prior year adjustments, $126,921, and an increase in the other general fund levies of $15,216. And to make note of why so much this year, part of it is during COVID, most people saw an increase in their market value of their homes. So because of that, the state legislature looks at that, and this is where equalization comes in, and they look at that and they say, oh, Foley residents have enough money to make some of these payments for some of these larger bills, so we're not going to give them as much state aid, and instead we're going to put it on the taxpayers. So it's a shift that the state legislature had made, and that is part of the reason why our levy is increasing so much, because we've received less state aid for it.
And it's hard to believe that makes any sense, because we don't have the tax base that a lot of schools have. Is it based on that, or is it based on population or
Do you know what's the equalization, any details beside that, or is that beyond?
That is the state, they set all of that stuff, so I don't know that, but it's all set by them. And how, because all of the referendum market value went up so much, we look like a wealthier, not like, we just look wealthier.
Okay.
So they,
On paper.
on paper, so yeah, so,
And, Erin, I think we'll just let you continue with your presentation because Shelby is here as well as our public finance advisor, so we may have to rely on her when we're through with our hearing here.
community service fund, community service levy went up $11,000 and the debt service went up $102,583, giving us a total change from last year of $984,259.58. The last slide is just our resolution for approving the truth and taxation, or approving the certifying the levy. And then that is all I have.
Thank you.
Can I just say a couple of things on that? Number one, the governor ran on 2 occasions, he promised to fully fund education. And we haven't gotten close to that, have we?
No.
And so that was a campaign promise that didn't work out very well. When I was down to the legislative, MSD Legislative Assembly, they talked about how many schools, and they actually had some bills concerning that, how many schools were getting grants and making a lot of money on grants. And I don't know if we're doing any of that, or getting any grants whatsoever. That could make a difference. But again, the whole idea of the equalization, we got the low note on high school in the first place. We got a low interest rate, and it was what our ability to pay was. Now we're hearing that our ability to pay is actually more than what it is compared to a lot of other schools. I also did on the Senate, I did a little figuring, 25%, if you look on the back of your tax sheet, 25% is way above everybody else. But that isn't quite correct. On the voter-approved levy, at least on my bill, it was down $66. On the other local levies, it was up 35%, which was considerably more. So I don't know where they came up with exactly. I see where you came up with the 25%, but I'm not good at math, but my percentage came up to about 15% increase, more realistic.
Shelby, can you address that question on the state legislation and equalization?
Yeah, the equalization for operating referendum and local optional revenue is based on your referendum market value per pupil compared to a number that they put in statute several years ago. And so last year, your referendum market value per pupil unit was about 480,000, and this year it's 571,000. And of course, everyone's is getting higher, but that number that it looks to in statute stays the same. So those statewide averages and values increased pretty uniformly across the state. The legislature did not decide to change that number in statute to what it looks to create the variation between aid and levy.
Is it Evans or Eilers?
Elders.
Eilers. Okay.
So does that mean that the state's essentially saving money?
Yes.
Or no?
On this, I should say, on that portion, there's, I mean,
They're paying less,
that's
they're
the
paying less than
equalization.
they were
Yeah.
4 years ago, or whatever.
And
Okay.
This is the public portion? of the
Yeah,
meeting?
I'd like to
Okay.
say that. Okay, so at this point then, we can open it up for questions, comments regarding the truth in taxation presentation and conversation. Is there anyone that would like to speak on that? And if you could state your name, please.
Daniel Dahl, 85th Street, Northeast Foley, Min. First thing off, I'd like to see some information in regard to the property values increase since COVID. I don't know where you're coming up with that information, for one thing, but another thing is, this gentleman's question never got answered about the HVAC system or whatever the heck it was that you guys are doing. I don't know where we gotta go to get that answer for the increase of taxes let on property. Another thing is, how many kids and children, do we have on open enrollment in the Foley School District right now? Anybody know? Those people are not paying taxes for the Foley School. Busing, they're bringing their kids in and whatever. We're paying the tax for those kids as well. Just so I'm
But we're
assuming.
receiving funding on those students.
Say it again?
We're receiving funding on those students?
Yes.
We
But as a
actually-
property owner in this Foley School District, we're paying for those kids as well as everybody else in the school.
On open enrollment students, because of that mostly coming from state aid, we actually get more money for the school on an open enrollment student than is paid in the taxes. Those are actually a boon to our budget right now.
Because I know Sauk Rapids actually closed their open enrollment.
They might have hit a saturation
And I'm
point.
just, I'm wondering why so it's that big of a dollar factor that's gonna detriment the school, or it's gonna make the school better because you make that much money on a student coming in from, let's just say Malacca or Forest or Little Falls or wherever.
It's been proved, we drive in, we make money on the deal. It's a good deal for the school.
Oh,
So our funding, each student is about $7,000, just it's a little bit more depending because they're weighted. And so for us, we definitely gain because of open enrollment. And you're right, the families don't pay the tax. The tax stays back in their home district, but we get the per pupil amount. And so if we lost that per pupil amount, it would be detrimental to our budget. We're looking at our exact number right now, so we can give you that.
well, if we could, we'd like to see the exact.
It's about 430 students, so if you think about that as $7,000 times the 430 students, that's a significant amount of money that we're pulling in from those students. And to address the question about South Rapids, it can be common for school districts to close open enrollment and they have a space issue. So if we ever got to a point that we weren't able to maintain, so for example, we border on some of our class sizes currently, the board can opt to close open enrollment because we don't have the space for those students. There's a formula in order to do that. It's just not something you can haphazardly do, but that's not something that the board has entertained to this point.
So what do you get per student on a basis? Is it under $1,000 per student, or?
I like the way that you're thinking. I wish we did get $100,000.
No, $1,000 I said.
It's 7,000, so.
Oh, it's $7,000 per child per year.
Correct.
Okay.
It's over $3 million, and so if we didn't have that, we operate on about $30 million. We have to reduce our budget by that. So it is significant for us.
To answer your question about HVAC, so HVAC and IAQ, they're the same project. They're just interchangeable words. We've been saying IAQ, indoor air quality, because it also encompasses like the fire panels and things like that. But that's the carbon, all that, that's all HVAC. That's like all that, that's what that is. It's the same project.
So you got quotes on it, three different bids and different things or anything, or have you been?
So
you
now
just go with the local guy because you like him or something, or not, or what?
But we have not contracted with, we have a site project management company that will go out for bids for us to hire other contractors, but the board will have the oversight to choose who we want to work with.
So another quick question, I haven't been to
Let me
meetings,
answer
but,
your other question earlier.
oh,
One advantage we have is the kids want to come here. We will drive into other school districts to pick kids up. It's our benefit, but also they want to come here because we have a good school. And we have, when we built these buildings, we built them with extra room.
well, as long as they're not troublemakers, it's fine and dandy, but if I got kids going to school here and you got troublemakers coming in from other schools because the other schools don't want them, I'm not gonna be happy.
In case they come in because they want to come in.
Well, I don't know.
We have a good school there.
Okay, one other quick question, like I said, I haven't been to other meetings, but is the busing owned by the district or is it contracted out now?
It's owned by the district. It's all, yeah. There's a couple of routes where we didn't have drivers, and so we have a contract for 2 routes, right? With, and that's simply because we were unable to hire enough drivers this year to pick up all the children. So,
Elizabeth, Trish, do you want to add to that?
I'm more concerned with the truth in taxation, just so
Okay.
we stay away from the open forum
Oh.
question.
So what's the total cost on your HVAC system?
I think we're going to get to that in
Oh.
our next
Okay, sorry.
item on our agenda, so.
well, thank you for your interest.
Well,
Yeah, are there any other additional, like on this?
Just one quick follow-up. I appreciate Ken touching on the grant situation during the COVID period. And I'm not sure if that was addressed or not. Was there something requested? Did we put in for it? Were we denied? Was there any funds available? Would those funds be able to be used for what we're looking at now?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part with the ESSER funds, but the ESSER funds were during COVID, you're correct.
Yep.
And because of COVID, I think the pandemic, we've decided it's done, thankfully. And because of COVID, and ESSER funds don't exist anymore. So when you look at some of the issues within our budget, we lost a significant amount of funding because we don't receive the ESSER funds anymore. So that was around $800,000 that we lost in revenue. Looking at this particular project, the Inflation Reduction Act, that is grants and funds, but that typically has more to do with geothermal energy. And there's also a lot of requirements with that. So the requirements would be you have to put the money forward first before you get the rebate back. And there's a lot of different parts to it where it probably wouldn't benefit us to do that. And the other part is other people that have used that, the cost of the project has also been very significant. Just to bring this back historically, the district has looked at this project before, probably 3 or 4 years ago. If we would have done it at that point, we probably would have saved $3 million. If we hold off on the project, things that do need to be replaced, it's going to cost us more money. So it will cost the taxpayers more if we wait. We're in a really perfect spot right now, and I think Shelby will address that. So hopefully we can answer some of those questions because you'll see some graphic representation about where our debt is and where our debt will fall off. So eventually the taxpayers will see a decrease in the amount of taxes. And we've also been fortunate as taxpayers to receive some loan forgiveness. And so we have 3 more years to capitalize on that. So we really do want to capitalize on that before we see the dip. And I think, Shelby, I don't want to steal your thunder. So I'm going to stop there and I'll let you continue then.
If I could just ask real, so the money that was available for ventilation system in schools during the COVID period, that would not apply to what we're doing here today?
That is correct. So the COVID funds, the ESSER funds, that was quite specific. So we could use those dollars to purchase technology. So in our district, for example, because students needed one-to-one devices and we didn't have that, we purchased one-to-one devices.
So we could use a portion of that funding for air quality projects. However, we didn't receive nearly, I'm trying to think of how much Foley even received, not even $1 million, not even close to where we would need to actually complete a project. That was more for like air quality machines and things like that, not for big projects. We only had a limited amount of funds to use.
I'm sorry, sir, when I misunderstood. What we received was more like the personal protective, not fixing mechanical systems.
Okay.
So we had money for masks, we had money for, we used it for an integration teacher to help students that were fell behind. And then the ESSER funds or the COVID money was very restricted with what we could use it for and restricted on the timeline. You had to spend it by a certain date.
And I get the mask stuff and all the personal stuff. I looked, I mean, maybe what I'm looking at is not true and factual. I don't know. But when you put in ventilation systems, it seems like that was one of the big things that the government was pushing, is to upgrade ventilation systems in schools. So I'm going to pull up those articles and that information and, you know,
You're correct. We were able to use some of that money for ventilation projects. But again, we only received a total ESSER amount for all of the different pots of ESSER funding. We received about $2 million. That wasn't enough to do a project and buy technology and to buy all of the things that we were required to purchase during COVID by the state. So they did allow that. You had to go through a whole process and get prior approval, but it wasn't feasible for us to use that because we had so many other things that we had to purchase as well.
And just so I'm clear, and that period of time is also long past now.
Yes.
Those funds are, right, correct, over?
Yes, and I can't think of one school that used the funds. I mean, schools were looking at buying technology because we were one-to-one and we were spending $300 a device. And plus we had purchased hotspots. I mean, there was just so many different things in the technology realm that we had to buy. that we couldn't afford anything other than that.
Were there any other comments from,
So what do you have in your budget for a 1 and 5 year plan? I mean, are we not gonna, because we've already got sticker shock here once with this tax increase. Is there something else coming up that we should probably plan for, or, you know, to get in the near future? Because typically businesses always have their 1 to 5 year plan. Now, I don't know what you guys do and how your business runs, but that's.
we have a 10-year plan, but this is the big item right now that has to get taken care of.
Every school district in the state of Minnesota is required to have a long-term facility maintenance plan. We just refer to it as our LTFM. So we need to have 10 years of planning, so for large-scale projects. So for example, a parking lot would be part of that. Your fields, your roof is another one, your boilers, fire safety. By the state, we're required to relook at our bathrooms. So I mean, those are certain things that we are gonna have to plan for in the future.
So you don't have nothing on the books now, but
Yeah, we do.
you do? Oh, okay,
We have to.
okay.
Every school in the state of Minnesota has to submit a plan to the Minnesota Department of Education for their long-term facility maintenance plan. So within this project, we have an LTFM plan as well that's been submitted.
Is that available to the public or not?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I want to find out because,
I make a comment also that percentages are always relative. For example, if you compare, like with Sartell, they're having a much bigger increase than we are, but they're only showing up at 4.5% because ours is so much lower to begin with, so therefore it appears to be higher. You have to keep that in fact in mind also. 25% sounds terrible, but
And Foley is the biggest city that we have in our district,
yeah.
and realistically, there hasn't been a building permit allowed in Foley in, what, 6 years?
yeah.
So we're not increasing the tax base at all.
1% growth rate in the city of Foley right now. I will tell you this, that Malacca schools actually dropped their student cost ratio or whatever, so.
1.83, isn't that what they're?
Yep. So, I mean, you probably never see that. I mean, it'd be like, that'd be a rarity, but surprisingly they did for whatever reason. They're, obviously their books are pretty tight or something.
We decreased our levy last year. Wasn't that good? I believe.
I think it's just 2 years.
Like you
Yeah, it'll have to be 2 years.
And Shelby did say to me that if somebody has their tax statement here, she's got another presentation next, but she did offer to look at the tax statement. If you have it available, she would be willing to kind of decipher it with you and look through it. I think we're at the point where we need to approve and certify the final levy for discussion, and our public meeting is at that point, so we would need a motion and a second for certification of our levy.
I will make a motion to approve the certification of the final levy.
No, this is the 25.2%. I just want to make sure.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Stephanie. So there's a motion made by Patrick, seconded by Stephanie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain.
So we have a 6-1, pardon me, 5-1 with 1 abstain. Motion passes. Next on our agenda then is the pre-sale report of bonds. And we have Shelby Quay here from Ellers, our public finance advisor.
Hi, I've been up in front of the board several times to talk about this project. And we're kind of at the point here where you need some funds to actually pay the bills on this project now. So this formality part of the bond issuance started in July when you authorized your LTFM plan and then authorized the issuance of bonds. And then you had sent the notice to the paper notifying the district that you would issue up to $13.8 million of general obligation bonds. And so you, as a district, of course, get your per pupil amount for LTFM, but the legislature also grants you the authority to go above that $380 per pupil for certain very limited number types of projects. Indoor air quality and health and safety projects being one of those limited factors or projects. So in order to make the payments on these $13.8 million of bonds, you will be levying additional, which is what Aaron spoke to as part of the TNT that increased one time, and it'll stay higher for a short period of time to make the payments on these bonds, and then it'll sort of settle in with the, once your existing debt expires. So this pre-sale report is the informational piece as we go into the sale next month to set expectations of where we anticipate the interest rates to be. So I'll just kind of walk through everything, but you have the authority to do this by the legislature, 123B 595. The bonds will be general obligation, tax exempt bonds. So you will get a lower interest rate just due to the fact that they're general obligations, pledging your full faith and credit. And then the authority to issue those bonds is granted to you by the state as well, and tax exempt because you're a school district and they're public service. So we'll issue the bonds for 16 years. You as a school district could issue up to 30, but you sort of hit this threshold at which you end up paying more interest, and that doesn't really make sense for you or the tax base. So 16 years and 11 months, and we'll pay principal through 2042. When you issue bonds and sell them on the public marketplace, you'll guarantee to the bondholders that they'll be able to hold those bonds for a certain period of time. We all hold bonds in our retirement accounts, but you will then be able to say at a certain period of time, about 8 years, that you'll be able to call those bonds. If the interest rates are lower and you can save taxpayer dollars, we'll do so at that time. If not, we're locked in at low interest rates, we'll just stay the course and pay those bonds off. As part of the bond issuance, we'll get two types of rating. Your underlying rating, so which is S&P taking in your financial health of the district and putting that out to the market, but you'll also get the state credit enhancement program, and that is the state saying that if you were not able, or you or any school district participating are not able to pay the bondholders the principal and interest, that they'll step in on your behalf. Of course, they'll come to the back end and reduce your aid, but it is an insurance and gives you a better interest rate because you participate in this program. Like any Minnesota school district, it's good debt out there in the market, so we're going to sell competitively on January 27th, and you'll award that evening to the lowest true interest cost bidder. So the lowest bidder is the winner. It's a closed sale that day. They all put in their best. The underwriters put in their best foot forward, and you'll take the lowest. And then the next few sections, if we go down just a little bit, you'll have some obligations to the market as part of having debt out there. Continuing disclosure, you'll put your audited financial statements out there, and should any changes occur to your rating or paying off or diffusing additional debt, you'll tell the market that as well. You'll be able to invest the bond proceeds and use that money as well towards your project. So the timeline there on the proposed debt schedule is listed there. Again, I said the formal part of this started in July when you authorized the sale of bonds, adopted your 10-year plan, sent the notice to the paper for the issuance of those bonds. The due diligence and the rating call will all happen in January. And then on January 27th is the day we'll actually take bids on the bonds. You'll have the funds available, and we'll be able to start investing those in February. So the schedules are listed on the next several pages. We had an initial project cost of $13.6 million, and like any school district project, you have to take an estimate as you go in, and then you bid later. So we're estimating 13.6. We need to generate a bond amount of about 13.8. So you could pay cost, underwriter's discount, legal and fiscal costs out of that, leaving you enough for the project costs. The initial estimates are a little bit higher, and then of course, depending on how bidding comes in, and how the project plays out. Again, very limited in nature and what the projects you can pay for, so you can't just go and replace carpet with these bond funds. If you have more funds available, we'll have to find either narrow projects that fits this in, meet the bid specifications, or in several years, it'll play itself back in terms of giving it back to the taxpayers. So the debt service schedule is on the next page there. That is the principal and interest that you'll be paying. But if you could go to the next page to this is your long-term capital plan, and of course this is very difficult to see, but we are monitoring your existing debt for a few more years. That lease levy rate sort of in the middle is the addition that the district had for the, in 2017, I believe that addition was. And then we're going to structure the new debt. And I think it's probably best illustrated on the next page, where we can get the pictorial of this as we watch your existing debt come off over the next several years. We'll make some smaller payments in the meantime until that debt is actually retired, at which point we're going to pay the larger component of the debt off while still lowering the tax rate over time with this particular bond issue. So happy to answer any questions on the debt structure itself. I think there was a comment made about the maximum effort loan aid, and you can see that while maximum effort loan aid, that reduction that can only be used to lower debt taxes, was not used in 23 and 24. We're taking that opportunity now in the next 3 years to mitigate that tax impact in the medium term, to lower the impact that these new bonds would have to the extent possible.
So am I understanding it correctly that if we did do this in 2 years to take advantage of the maximum effort loan, those orange bars in those 3 years, the green would go up to where the green is?
Correct.
So it would cost us more than if we didn't?
Yes. Yep. That was state aid that had come back from the state after, as a result of participating in the maximum effort program that is now coming back to the taxpayers.
I thought that loan was over after 30 years, and we did that 30 years.
Yeah, so the maximum effort loan aid, the MILA, the green bars there, are because the negotiations that went on with the state to say that there was not uniformity in how much the state was paid back. They forgave your loan, but you were supposed to be paying into the state during that time, and some districts paid in more than others. So that is your calculation of how much interest you paid into the state over your period of time which you had the maximum effort loan aid. They added that all up and gave it back to the taxpayers.
You know, we also had one-day bond referendums.
So that is something you no longer have, is that one-day bond.
What's the difference between a bond and a levy?
So I'll defer to the chair on if this is still an open session, otherwise.
I'm sorry.
Questions after.
You did say you would stay after, so that might be,
Okay.
thank you.
That might be a good question to answer very quickly.
If you would like me to answer that.
What is the difference between a bond
If
and?
you have time, Shelby, go first. So a bond and a levy. So a levy is just a tax. And so you're taxed to either pay the interest and principal and interest on the bond. But I think generally when we think as schools of a bond versus a levy is an operating levy. So a school district can go to the voters for an amount per pupil to pay operating costs in addition to any sort of projects. The district does not have an operating levy per pupil amount. So a bond is the debt that a school district incurs, and that could either be a voter-approved debt or a voter-approved bond or a board-approved bond.
I'm just going to say, we built 3 great buildings within a 10-year period of each, and yet one of the things of having beautiful buildings like this, they have to be maintained.
So what's the age of the building where the HVAC is going to be replaced?
About 35,
Pardon me?
close to 35.
Okay, so if you can figure in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be replacing the other ones as well that are 25 years old or whatever, I'm assuming.
One of the pods.
That's in our 10-year plan that we can.
Okay.
Were you finished?
I'm finished.
Okay, and this, is there any questions from the board for Shelby? And this is just presentation only, so I appreciate it.
Information only, you will need to take action at the January 27th meeting to award the sale.
Okay?
I just want to, as long as you're there, I just point out the fact that when we built all these things, and I knew what, I told the superintendent we need a bigger auditorium. 350 people was not enough, and proved it. I told him we needed air conditioning, I told him we needed a swimming pool. We only have 6 lanes, we can't hold major meets because we don't have 8 lanes. You know, these things cost money. You know, and it's a lot cheaper if you do it right away than do it when you run, is what we're finding out right now.
And you're still willing to stay if anyone has their tax statement or has questions, even if you don't have your tax statement? Okay, thank you so much. Our next topic here is the vacant board position that will be open as of January 3rd, 2025, and it is discussion action. And so I would open our meeting up to discussion on that.
So we did talk about this at a work session 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And I think we all kind of came away with the idea that we've had this past practice that we've used now a few times of opening up for applications and then interviewing any interested applicants and then choosing from the applicant pool. We did that how many years ago?
We did it once with you.
Well, I was not
I know you
appointed.
didn't get selected.
But yeah, that was probably 6-ish years ago. And then 2 years ago with Wayne, so I mean, we have
2 times it's happened.
Yeah. 2 times in recent memory. Personally, I think that's probably the fairest thing. And then if people who ran want to come in and do that again, or maybe they decide, oh, you know, not, I don't know, but I don't know, it feels to me like we should be consistent. That's my thought.
I will just say that Patrick is right. We talked about it at the work session about what we've done in the past and doing interviewing and if that should be something we should do moving forward. But the more like I thought about the situation we were in when the last time is that we had a board member that was resigning, but we didn't have a recent election. Like, we have not even canvassed our new board members, and so I feel that board members are appointed by the public, and they're appointed by the voters. And due to the fact that we just had a recent election, that we go with the next highest vote recipient on the board versus us trying to determine who's best on the board.
I think we knew that when we had our board workshop, and we came to a consensus that we wanted the interview process.
We did, but as I dug into it, as I was acting chair when we did, when Emily resigned and we did it for Wayne, like he was vetted, it was all the things, you know, and I feel like, why would we not go with what our voters want versus if we have that
With
information?
what's going on right now, I think there's a lot more things, important things to do than having more interviews, more questions. And then so say you do this, you're 3 months out, right? So say you do an interview or you fill out your paperwork, and that's got to be approved. It's 3 months out. A lot of stuff is going to be happening in the next 3 months. Now you're going to be a person short. But
I like the idea of going off to the next highest vote carrier, because the entire public is have a say, get input on that, as opposed to just the 6 of us or 7 of us at that point.
I would like to see the new incoming board members at that point make that decision as well. I won't be here, so I won't be part of the decision, so we got 2 new people coming in, maybe they should be part of that
but it was agreed upon to have it on this agenda.
We didn't agree to come to a conclusion.
It's on as a discussion action item.
Well, I'll make a motion to appoint the next highest voter from the most recent election.
So are we having discussion on a motion?
Well, this isn't supposed to be action, this is discussion.
It's a discussion action item. Ken.
Well, you said we could say that.
Yeah, it's been on our agenda that we received last week.
So,
I think, Madam Chair, you have a motion, I think you need a second and then a discussion.
Correct.
I wasn't sure what the order was.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's
for clarifying.
it's a motion and a second. And then we have further discussion.
I'll second it.
So Stephanie's made a motion to take the next highest vote getter, if I'm understanding your motion correct. And then Nathan has seconded. Any further discussion?
So I'm going to point out the obvious, the next highest vote getter is Wayne. So I think it would be appropriate for Wayne to recuse himself on a vote for himself to be on the board. That would be my thought on that. I don't know, it seems a little squishy to me.
How does everyone feel about that? I mean, we do all vote to give ourselves, we haven't done it in a number of years, but we do all vote to agree to our wage that we receive yearly, which we haven't done in a number of years. It's stayed the same, but
Well, and we're voting on two different terms. I mean, Wayne is at this point, hasn't even finished his current term that he's in, so he's still entitled to a vote at this point. And the next term will start in January, and if it were, it doesn't matter who it was, the next highest vote. It just so happens to be a current board member that's been vetted, but say it wasn't. I mean, it is what it is. He's still serving on this term, so therefore he should have a vote.
Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, Mr. Wilson would have to accept the position, like our new board member and the existing board members have to accept the position if they didn't. The motion would be for the next vote getter after Mr. Wilson has said.
correct, because everybody does have 30 days to even accept the position, including our new board members.
And I would be in favor of them, you know, the next versus us, especially considering the recent election. Like I said, we haven't even canvassed the vote from the winners. Let's go with what the voters want.
Well, yeah, the voters did say what they wanted.
So a motion has been made by Stephanie, seconded by Nathan, to accept the next highest vote getter to complete the vacant board position beginning January 3rd, 2025. So all those in favor,
Okay, discussion?
if you have something
Oh,
further.
sure. It reminds me just basically of a few years ago when the party on the national level wanted to appoint somebody in the Supreme Court, and the opposition said, we gotta wait till the new group comes in to make that decision, and that's what they did.
But last year, the last time we went through this, we also had a situation where a board member was insistent that we choose somebody based on the fact that they were vetted. And now it's different, and I'm confused by that.
And then, Ken, if you didn't want it to be a discussion action item, this agenda came out last week Thursday, so you should have connected with me and we could have had a discussion.
I picked up the,
No, I'm sorry, it's available to board members on last week. So, we're ready for our vote with the motion made by Stephanie, seconded by Nathan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
name,
And again, I'm simply opposed to the process, not the individual.
same thing.
So the vote was 4-3. So the motion passes to accept the next highest vote getter to fill the vacant position.
Congratulations, Lynn.
Thank you.
If you accept.
I will.
We have the superintendent search as an agenda item, as discussion action. So we've had a couple of work sessions regarding this. We had to get the ball rolling with superintendent search, speaking with MSBA and their legal team there. We were able to form a consensus at work sessions and move forward with an entity to start our search, which is in the very, very, very early stages. And so we're going to finalize that this evening. And it's been consensus to go with Bruce Miles from the Big River Group to conduct the search. And I would need a motion and a second on that. And there were 4 entities that we looked at as a group, and we all did our due diligence and put ourselves into action and contacted the entities, and it was decided upon the Big River Group. So,
Madam Chair, I also have a question.
mhm.
Are we also going to have the action then for the forming of the committee?
Correct, that's
Okay, I
Well, I
wasn't
mean,
sure. Just one thing on the agenda, sorry.
I was thinking maybe Patrick could give us, because he was
Yeah.
spoke with.
I was going to ask if you would
Oh.
give a little more of an
Sure.
overview regarding the Big River Group, please.
All right, so spoilers for our next item, which will be about the committee, but I'm on the committee for heading up the superintendent search, and we're choosing Big River, which is done with Bruce Miles. Now, Bruce has actually worked for the district in the past before my time, and I've had already several conversations with Bruce, because we said, well, is there anything we can kind of start before we have our official action and things like that. And it's been really good. He's very inquisitive, and he really is interested in us in having a really good search. But also, it's not like they're not just stopping when the day the search is over. They're also talking about onboarding processes and review processes and all that kind of stuff too, to kind of help us have a good transition and everything. And so last time we went with MSBA, they were one of the groups we did look at this time, and I think we were kind of unhappy with the transition services MSBA had offered us in the past. So I'm very excited about Bruce. I sent him an email, and I swear it's like 3 minutes later, I'm getting a text or a phone call. He's just hyper responsive and everything. He's very open to having like stakeholders very involved in other committees, just like similar to what we did last time in previous searches, and making sure that we're bringing a lot of different people and ideas to the table. I think he's going to be a good fit for our community.
Well, some of our board members also know him,
Yes.
so it's not like it's a stranger.
Yeah.
And my only concern is, I talked to him on the phone, he lives in Georgia, and I know he's also a lot of how's that gonna work?
So we're going to do some Zooms, and then as necessary, when he needs to be here, he'll be here. So for instance, the committee, which is a non-quorum group of board members, so it's not like it has to be a public thing, we're going to have a Zoom with him on Wednesday to kind of go over some of these first things. One of the things he said the board can do before we all kind of get going is kind of go through like what are some personality traits, what are some emphasis, what are some project, what are like 3 to 5 year ideas we have for moving the district forward. So at our last work session, we talked about those things. Those aren't like hard concrete things, those are brainstorming. So now we're going to take these things to Bruce. The other thing he said is, hey, have the board go through the current contract. It's a publicly available document. It's, I think, on our website. And he said, go through, what do people like about it? What do people not like? What do we need to change? Let's make sure that it goes through legal and all that. So a lot of these proactive things is we kind of set up for our search that we can do to prep for it. And so I think we're going to be hitting the ground running.
I know Bruce, he's a good guy. You did ask us on the superintendent's contract to go with the green and.
Yep.
And what are we going to do with that?
Well, so that was turned in to me tonight.
Okay.
And then I'm going to collate all that and pass it on to Bruce.
I'd there any other questions for Patrick or any other of the committee members regarding the Big River Group?
And we're gonna vote on the committee, like, actually give it official, whatever, but, the committee right now is myself and Sharon, and, Bruce recommended one of our new oncoming members also be part of the committee, and so, Ms. Visner, wave her hand there, has graciously agreed to help us with this as well when she becomes a new board member. So she's already got homework set up for her when she joins us. So I want to say thank you again to Pam for volunteering for something right out the gate like that.
So I would need a motion and a second for the Big River Group.
I'll make a motion to use Big River.
Second.
Motion is made by Wayne, seconded by Patrick. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And then we have the approval of the committee, which is made up of Sharon Kipka, Patrick Lubneski, and Pam Visner. So I need a motion and a second for that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is made by Ken, seconded by Wayne. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And there will be other public committees too that will need to be voted on. I think, I'm not sure 100% how that's going to work, but there'll be time for, like, teachers, staff, employees, public, parents, community members of all kinds. And I think Mr. Anderson has graciously said he would be love to be part of that at some point too.
I'll help.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're looking forward to everyone being involved.
Does that need to be a formal motion too?
I think we're not quite there yet, and if we need to, we'll do it then. I'll have to ask Bruce, but he didn't even know this had to be a formal motion, so I have to check with MSBA.
And we have the FBE speech language pathologist MOU, which is discussion action. So Superintendent Carey.
This last year, if you recall, at the end of last school year, we had one of our SLPs had retired, and we had the position posted for quite some time for a full-time speech language pathologist. And we did not receive one application, but we had quite a few students that still needed service for speech. And so looking at our numbers, we had roughly, I think we started with about 60 in the beginning of the year, and that needed some sort of speech service. And at the time, we have 2 SLPs in our district, so we had to be really creative, and we had to offer virtual speech, telehealth speech for our students. And the district and FUE, the teachers bargaining unit, we worked together to create the MOU. And if you had a chance to look through it, you'll notice that we talked about that there was a shortage of qualified teachers for this particular position, and there's just some guidelines that the union has to follow, as well as the school district. Part of that is with a notice of assignment, so if that does change, that we would convene a meeting of all of our current speech language pathologists to address what the needs are of the district. And that also in the MOU, we've discussed that the district needs to contract with a third-party private or public entity. In this case, we do contract with a service that's called Lighthouse, and that was recommended from our Benton Stearns Education District Executive Director to obtain the services. So the services that our students are receiving, they still do receive service from a licensed speech language pathologist, and they have to be highly credentialed, so we're very fortunate that we're able to still maintain a very high level of service for our students. You'll also see the employment status because we contract with this entity. The people that are providing the services to our students, they are not our employees, so they don't have any bargaining rights or any contractual rights in the district, continuing contract rights. And then also there's some language about how our students that are being serviced by our other 2 SLPs. So for example, we worked very diligently on making sure that the students that are receiving virtual speech services, that it's appropriate for them. And we do have some students in the district that it is not appropriate that they receive virtual speech services so that they do have their speech services in-house. And so that there's some language in the MOU about what that looks like. You'll see a maximum of 5 students from outside of their assigned buildings. So for example, there's 5 high school students, that's it, to go to 1 SLP. And then each SLP is only allowed to be in 2 buildings. So for example, working in the elementary school and the high school. And in this case, you'll see that it's outlined that the students that are receiving services, if it's from a different building, we do have people that walk those students down to receive the service from our elementary SLPs. As a component of speech language pathologist and a student on an individual education plan or an IEP, that there are assessments that are necessary. And so the assessments are being done in-house, so the MOU specifies how we divvy out those assessments. So it's equal to our current SLPs, and because of the additional time that would take, we've agreed that our early outs and then our redact day trainings, that they would use that time because they're not required as SLPs to be in the phase 1 training for the redact, so they're able to use that time to complete any assessments. This MOU is for this year, the conclusion of this school year.
Now, is this making up for the stuff they didn't do during the summer?
No, that's different.
That can be done.
That is to be done.
And so are we pausing in our search for an SLP, or we're leaving it open, or?
We have to evaluate our current students at this time to see if it's appropriate to house 3 SLPs.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So is there any other discussion? Otherwise, I would need a motion and a second for the MOU and the speech language pathology.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Patrick, seconded by Nathan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to our policies that we're requiring review. This is discussion only for first reading and call for public comment on the following policies. Policy 102, which is the equal educational opportunity. Policy 103, complaints, students, employees, parents, other persons. Policy 104, school district mission statement. Policy 530, immunization requirements. Policy 619, staff development for standards. Policy 704, development and maintenance of an inventory of fixed assets and a fixed asset accounting system. Is there any discussion from the board regarding the first reading of those policies?
I think it's basically SBA suggestions or rules, so that's, it's simple.
Correct. Hearing no further questions or discussion, we'll go on to the policies requiring review. This is discussion action. These are the third and final reading. Call for comment. Policy 202, school board officers. Policy 207, public hearings. Policy 213, school board committees. Policy 423, employee-student relationships. And policy 519, interviews of students by outside agencies. And the policy committee did meet recently, and there was no major strikeouts or really anything different than updating language from MSBA suggestions.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Ken, seconded by Patrick. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have the budget and enrollment report, Ms. Noska.
Right there, too. It looks like we lost about 5 students this month. Couple in the elementary where is it, one in the elementary, one in the middle school, and 3 in the intermediate. What we have currently in our ADM is pretty close to what we actually have right here. We anticipate a lower ADM, that's what we project, a lower one, so that it helps with our revenue and we'd rather under-expect revenue than overstate our numbers. So right now it is staying pretty even. We'll keep monitoring it though. And the budget. Currently, if you look at the revenues for this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year, it shows our local revenue was over $2.7 million. This year it's $283,000. And I just wanted to point out a big difference in that is how we are recording a lot of our taxes. Originally last year they had recorded taxes differently, and we are changing that so it's not reflecting. It goes to a balance sheet, so it's not showing as revenues right now, so that's why that's such a big difference. We also don't receive as much revenue in November, the month of November, because of the taxes coming in, but that's just put onto our balance sheets at this time. Otherwise, our expenditures are less than they were last year at this time, which is good, and we are on track as to where we were last year with just a little bit better outlook this year with the expenditures so far.
Are there any questions from the board for Ms. Molska?
Around this time last year, we were already talking about budget adjustments. What are any thoughts about, any thoughts been given to that sort of topic at all yet?
I'm hoping to have a revised budget. It might not happen until February this year. I'm working with Dion, our payroll person. We're going to try something different with our payroll budget. We're going to build it right in SMART, and it might take a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but our audit is not officially over yet. So as soon as we get the official word from them, I have actually already started on the revised budget, but I don't have concrete numbers yet at all. I do know our revenue will probably not change very much because what we originally budgeted for revenue is where we're at with our ADMs currently. So it's going to be looking at the expenditures to see where we're at there.
Thank you.
Moving on to administrator information and reports. Dr. Carey, do you have things to add this evening?
I do, I just have a few things. I wanted to provide the board with an update with the READ Act. And I believe the last time that Ms. Ron was here was in October, and the board had asked for her to come back in January. So we hopefully will have her in January to talk a bit more about what's been happening and the different modules. But you should be very proud of our staff because the training is not easy, and especially going through the training, it's very time consuming. But there's really a lot of good information that staff are taking from it. I heard last week a teacher in one of the buildings said to the students that we're going to teach vocabulary different this week because everything that we've been doing is wrong. So it is making an impact in the classroom, and that's what you want to see. And so we have another professional development day this Thursday, and teachers need to be done with module 6. And at this point, we're at 61% of teachers that have completed module 6. So they'll have some time in the morning, and this was written last week, so I have a feeling that that's probably been changed a bit too. Module 5 are at 91%, and module 4 is at 99%. And we know that there are plans in place for people to spend some additional time. So my gut is telling me that everyone is through 4 and 5 at this point. So that's something to be very, very proud of. And again, we'll have that synchronous time on the 19th from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. The other part that I wanted to update the board very quickly about, we've spent a lot of time talking about indoor air quality project. And again, we continue to have calls with SiteLogic. And at this point, by mid-January, 95% of our construction documents will be finalized. And so when we get a little closer to that, we'll have probably a new board committee, and we'll start pulling in the facilities committee at that point to review some of those construction documents, because we should be complete by January 21st. And looking at a public bid notice, we're anticipating that around the week of January 27th. The bid documents are available on February 3rd, and then we'll have a pre-bid walkthrough. So we'll have a list of people that will be invited, and then we'll walk through the project with them so they understand what the scope of the project is. And of course, we want to make sure that we try to keep the project as local as we can. And then the bid opening is going to be either March 11th or the 18th. And the part with the bid opening is we won't be making any decisions at that point, because SiteLogic will have to go through and vet the bids to make sure that they're accurate, that people really understand what the project is. And then we'll make a bid recommendation March 18th or the 25th, around that time. Depending on how the board meetings fall, we may have to have a special board meeting, because we don't want to wait till April. So we want to make sure that we have these things in line. And then finally, the last thing I'd like to say is happy holidays to all of our staff and our students and community members. If you're in the buildings right now, it is a very joyous and jolly time. So very, very busy for everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Noster, do you have anything further tonight?
Yes, I just want to clarify. I am so sorry, I read the wrong number to you when I was talking about the revenue we received in November of last year. It was only $970,000. $2,774,000 was our actual year-long local. So I just wanted to make that known to you, guys. I apologize for that.
You've had a lot of numbers tonight.
We do have winter break coming up, December 20th through, school resumes then on the 2nd of January, and the organizational meeting will be held on January 6th, 2025. We also have some committees to report. I believe Foley Area Foundation met on November 23rd. I was not able to attend that meeting, but what was discussed was fundraising letter will be going out to the community members. So that was the big discussion. Dr. Perry, do you have anything else to add regarding that?
I'm glad that you said it, because I honestly forgot.
Okay,
It's been a while, so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
you're welcome. Then health and safety also met. So if we have a committee member that would like to report on that. Okay. And policy vet, and that was discussed tonight with our reviews. We have an opportunity for our administrators to comment. Mr. Inglis, do you have anything?
Just a few things to share tonight. Each school across the state that's a member of the Minnesota State High School League has the opportunity to hand out the Excel and the AAA award. The Excel award goes to a junior who is doing well in school, participates in Minnesota State High School League Fine Arts and Athletics, and then has a leadership role at the school, and then also has a community service component in their community. The AAA is for a senior. This goes to a student, a male and a female student who excels in academics, the fine arts, and athletics. Once schools have selected, the application process gets submitted to different regions and statewide, so we'll find out in the next few months if our recipients have received any additional accolades. Our Excel award winners were Ava Tresa and Noah Brun, and our AAA award winners were Helen Lashinsky and Aaron Vanderweiss. The weight room, some of you may have seen some posts about that, completely fundraised project is starting to make some good strides. We have some donations that have been coming in. That has met to kind of go over our strategic plan for how we want to approach various different businesses, and then some grants that we have found have also been applied for, the largest of which being the Burnick Family Foundation grant, which can be awarded up to $40,000. That goes to youth and education, and then youth health and fitness are the two main checkpoints that they look for in that one. We'll find out mid-January if we received any funding for that particular grant. Just kind of the only other things to kind of touch on, all the coaches and advisors from the Grand Ridge Conference met early November in Piers to go through all the policies in the handbook and provide suggestions to activity directors for changes within the conference. And then one of the decisions, if you've been to kind of some of the activities this year, is the conference. It's not just a Foley decision, but the C-Squad girls basketball due to declining numbers to kind of across the state of Minnesota. We made the decision that up until Christmas break, as a conference, we didn't play any C-Squad girls basketball games. That will get re-looked at in the next few weeks here as the 8th grade season does end at holiday break. So you have potential more participants to get your numbers up now that their 8th grade seasons are over. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Bueller?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank both Ken and Becky for your years of service on the school board. It's great work you guys have done, and there's a lot of institutional knowledge I'll be walking away after these years. And I want to thank you for everything you guys have done to support the intermediate school and Foley Public Schools in general. So thank you.
Mr. Kruger?
Tomorrow morning, 9th grade choir and intermediate school jazz band are going to be playing in our elementary school hallways for students, so a little early thank you to them. And Wednesday mornings our December assembly, our annual December assembly event, I guess. So if you're in the building, that's at 9 o'clock, so that'll be something to see.
Thank you. And then we have opportunity for board member comment. Nathan Anderson?
Nothing tonight.
Ben Wilson?
I'm good.
Patrick?
I want to say thank you and farewell, Madam Chair Becky, and Mr. Ken Anderson over there. Many, many years of service to this community, to this school. I want to say thank you very much. I know it's been really great for my first 4 years to have the depth of knowledge is on this board, and I'm still grateful that we're going to have some new members coming out, but we still have some people more experienced with us. But yeah, it is the institutional knowledge is going to be missed, and I think especially in the case of Mr. Anderson, who taught here for a number of years and has lived here, and his kids went here and all that. There's a lot of times when he'll mention something that only if you were a student here back in the day, you probably would remember those things. And that's something we're really going to miss too, is that holistic knowledge too, not just being a community member, parent, but also a teacher.
I appreciate that, but Shelley told me I will be on the board until January 6th because that's when my term ends. So technically I have one more board meeting.
Oh, you do?
No, you'll be done before that.
Right?
You're done before the
I'm
board
done
meeting.
before that.
Yes.
This is it.
But anything, if something happens up until that point,
Okay.
So everyone behave so they can take their
Yes.
well-earned break.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Ken, do you have any comments?
Yes, I have a bunch of them here. I want to congratulate Lauren Landowski for being our new food service person. I think she'll do a great job. She's a great tradition to follow, but she's been part of that along the way. You have here Ben Stearns. I talked to our director there, Aaron, that they're going to have to look for somebody. I hope somebody will take that up. I've been on there a long time. I've seen a lot of things on Ben Stearns, and it's a great organization, as Patrick pointed out. It saves us a lot of money, things that we couldn't afford to do. So that's important. Also in the future, I know we're getting somebody else that was retired, I don't know, after when, Darwin. I hope he has an active part in this new building program, because I kind of hope he did some of our meetings when we were discussing things, and nobody knows the building more than Darwin does. So I hope we certainly include that. You mentioned the AAA selection. I had a 2-year term as being one of the judges on AAA, and it's quite a beautiful, wonderful thing to see these people come in. And you ever been to any of those?
To the selection process.
Yeah.
I always go to the district meeting, this year's in Albany, and I've been to almost since then.
Okay, it's great, and one of the years we actually picked one of the Foley people, Josh Klingenberg was one of our representatives a few years ago. But it's a lot of responsibility, those great kids coming to that situation. Also want to point out, since we had our last meeting and we had our ESS, and we had three people from Foley, 2 people that were there, one that wasn't. And it was a great thing going on, and it's an interesting thing about it, it was created by superintendents. And one of the guys, or the 2 people in particular, one was from Buffalo and the other one was from Sauk Center. And the Buffalo one is still there, and I commended him in front of the board at that particular time, and in front of the teachers, because it really is appreciated that we appreciate those people, the support staff. And sometimes we take them for granted, and we certainly don't want to do that. I also spent a few days a couple weeks ago being at the legislative body for BMSBA, and there were 120 board members there, so it was really unique. There's no cliques. Every school basically had board members there, and so I got a chance to meet and talk to a lot of board members from all over the state, and you just walk in and it just sort of unbelievably welcoming. There was one thing that I was a little concerned about that came up, that they were trying to change the state law. Apparently the state law says you can't expel kids, and they wanted to change that so that you could expel kids. And personally, I have a little problem with that. I think expelling kids and getting them out of the school doesn't do them a bit of good, you know. But I listened to the schools that came up and said, listen, we're a small school. We have an alternative school. But we have a small school, and we have a kid there who's out of control. And then the parents that are in grade school, and they're having all kinds of problems. And the parents start sending them to other schools. And it's really could be very harmful in both ways. I saw both sides, but it went down fast, so that was interesting. But it was very rewarding. And I guess that's very it. Just wish everybody Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Stephanie?
I just want to thank the community members for coming and being part of this meeting. There's a lot of information, and as much as we would love to be able to engage, we can't do that. But I do invite you to reach out with questions, because that's how we learn, is we ask questions and we get the right information. So I would invite you to reach out to the school district itself before reaching out to somebody that may be just as frustrated. So thank you for coming. And Becky and Ken, I wish you the very best, and I wish you endless amounts of time to do what you love to do. Thank you.
Sharon?
Tis the season for concert. The 4th grade concert was indeed a very patriotic concert that stirred the hearts of this wonderful rural community. Thanks to the district that provided me with the opportunity for professional development at the MREA Summit. It is the best learning opportunity of the year to me. Congratulations to our education support team, Resource Training and Solutions, for providing districts the opportunity to celebrate these heroes. The Junior High 1 Act was just fun. I think it was fast food, and it was just really unique. And the students actually wrote one of the scenes, and I thought it was the funniest one. Our students were engaged. Thank you, Janelle Hesh, for, she just always goes above and beyond. I want to thank the nutrition department for the great Thanksgiving dinner. I got to help serve, and it was so tasty, and I want to thank these people for making it happen. I got the opportunity to attend the FES band concert the FIS for 5, 6, 7, and 8, and the FHS concert. The FIS 6th, 7th, and 8th grade choral concert. Also, there was the intro to guitar. I'm upset about missing tonight, FHS choir concert. Our music program is alive and well. I want to thank Ken and Becky for their service. Ken's been my go-to for years. Thank you, Ken. I want to thank Sarah Daler for her work at FES as administrative secretary, and welcome to Heidi Miller, our new secretary. Also, welcome to Lori Landowski as our nutrition director, and thank you, Cheryl Pick, for your work and for your phase out as previous director. Condolences to the Donnie Beeler family. 58 years, he saw our students back and forth to school. Good news, the water issue for the city is up and running. Congratulations. I think that's something we've waited for a long time. I want to thank all who showed up tonight, and finally, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Can I add just one more thing? A very good dear friend of mine, and an educator, and she's been on the board of the soccer office for over 28 years. Her name is Jan Schollers. She's undergoing very serious surgery tomorrow. They're replacing a couple of the valves. It's very life-threatening. And I've kept in contact with her. She was my vice chair on resource, and I was her vice chair of Dennis Stearns. And she's an outstanding person. I'm praying a lot for her.
And I would just end with a question for Aaron and possibly for Shelby. So the approval of the certification of the final levy, which was action item tonight, it's my understanding that if that was not certified, I mean, we authorized all of this back in July, so I'm a little confused on the vote. Because had we not certified that, I mean, we could run into major problems with breach of contract. I mean, we would be sued by Psychologic and those that are already gone forward with all of our signed documents, correct? Correct? Okay, so thank you for that.
I'm sure we would have lost about $5 million.
We would have lost $5 million with that vote. Okay, so that's where I was a little confused.
I believe the vote in July was unanimous.
Pardon me?
I believe the vote in July was unanimous.
It was. Yeah, that's why I was confused. Okay, so that's all I have this evening. So I would,
Just a couple points of correction. I just want to make sure that people are on the board, especially with that IEP project that Darwin Clark, he is an integral part of those meetings. He is in his calls. He probably spends the most time on anyone with Psychologic, and he was just with them. Recently, he's got another building visit coming in the beginning of January, so he is very, very important to that project, so he is involved. I think what Mr. Anderson was referring to is the Minnesota Fair People's Dismissal Act. In Minnesota, we are still able to expel students. I'm thinking that was probably non-exclusionary discipline, would be my thought with what was discussed at, because that was a legislative change that we've discussed. So I just want to make sure the board is aware that we are able to still expel students if necessary, but there is a lengthy process to do that.
thank you. So I would need a motion